I was 25, sitting in the glass lobby of one of the most prestigious firms in the city, hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to steady the thundering beat of my heart. This wasn't just any interview, it was the interview. The position I had dreamed about for years, the one I'd studied late into the night for, the one that could finally put me on my own 2 feet, with enough stability to provide for my kids. I glanced down at my worn shoes, polished as best as I could, and smoothed the sleeves of my plain blouse. I had nothing flashy, no designer suit like my younger sister Lindsay always wore, but I had experience, determination, and the fire to prove myself. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. When the recruiter finally came out, a tall man in his 40s with sharp glasses and a clipped tone, he shook my hand and smiled politely. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming in." I exhaled slowly, forcing a smile. Thank you for the opportunity. But as we walked back into the interview room, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, his expression shifting subtly, though he said nothing. I pushed my nerves aside, answering his questions steadily, passionately, explaining my projects, my drive, my ideas. For once, I felt like I was standing tall in front of someone who might actually see me. Halfway through, though, he asked a question that chilled me. "Do you get along with your family?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" He cleared his throat. "It's just odd timing. I received a message right before we started." He didn't elaborate, but I saw the flash of hesitation in his eyes, like a seed of doubt had been planted in his mind before I had even opened my mouth. My stomach knotted, but I kept going, finishing the interview with as much dignity as I could muster. When I left the building, the cold air hit me like a slap. I dug out my phone, and there it was, a string of texts from my mom, sent proudly into the family group chat where they knew I would see them. "Mom, just texted the recruiter. Told him not to hire that worthless trash. He deserves to know the truth." Dad, "Ha ha. Good. Tell him to give it to Lindsay instead. At least she looks the part." Lindsay, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." My hands shook as I read, bile rising in my throat. They hadn't just sabotaged me. They wanted me to see it, to know they thought so little of me that they'd destroy my future before it even started. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone into the street. But before I could even process it, I saw her. Lindsay. She was walking out of the same building, her heels clicking confidently on the pavement, her lipstick perfect, her smile smug. She twirled her hair and waved an envelope in the air. "Guess who just nailed your interview?" she sang, her voice sweet poison. I froze. "You didn't." She leaned closer, smirk widening. "The recruiter said you weren't professional enough, but lucky for me, I was right there to prove him wrong." She tapped the envelope against my chest. "Looks like they chose the better sister." My vision blurred. My parents had orchestrated this, texting the recruiter, laughing as they handed my future to her like it was some kind of prize. As she sauntered away, hips swaying with triumph, I stood rooted on the sidewalk, fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Humiliation burned in every vein. My parents had always favored Lindsay, but this was different. This was war. And as I looked up at the glass tower reflecting the cloudy sky, one thought cut through the storm. If they wanted to play dirty, so could I, but I wouldn't just take the offer back. I'd make sure the very thing they used to laugh at me destroyed them instead. The following days felt like walking through a fog made of glass shards. Every thought cut, every memory stung. I couldn't close my eyes without seeing Lindsay's smug smile, that crisp envelope brushing against my chest like a weapon, or my parents' text messages, their laughter vibrating in my skull. I'd been humiliated before. I'd been called names, pushed aside, forgotten. But this was different. This was them ripping the ground out from under me while my children stood waiting for the stability I had promised them. When I tucked Hannah and Michael into bed at night, I whispered lies I barely believed. "Mommy's fine. Mommy's got this." But inside, my blood boiled. My parents had always made sure I was the shadow to Lindsay's spotlight. Birthdays where she got jewelry while I got socks. Report cards where my A's were ignored while her C's were praised with, "She's the smart one, she just needs time." Even when I gave birth, they showed up with flowers, for Lindsay, congratulating her on being an aunt, while I sat in the hospital bed invisible. But this time they had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. They hadn't just mocked me, they had stolen my future in front of me and laughed while handing it to her. And Lindsay made sure to twist the knife. She came by the house the following week, strutting in like she owned the world, tossing her purse on the couch. Hannah and Michael were playing quietly, but Lindsay's voice carried every word meant for me. "Work's amazing," she said loudly, dropping her shiny new badge on the table so it clinked. "Everyone there already loves me. Guess I was born for this job." Mom smiled from the kitchen, slicing fruit. "See, this is what happens when talent meets opportunity. Not everyone can have what Lindsay has." Dad chuckled from his chair, beer in hand. "Trash doesn't belong in boardrooms. That recruiter saw it clear as day." Lindsay smirked at me, eyes glinting. "Oh, don't pout. You had your chance. Some people just aren't meant to succeed. But don't worry, sis. When I'm in charge, maybe I'll let you fetch my coffee." Michael looked up from the floor, frowning. "Don't talk to my mom like that." Lindsay snorted. "Relax, kid. I'm just telling the truth." I pulled my children close, my jaw tight, my nails digging crescents into my palms. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. Not because I believed their words, but because I was done wasting breath. Silence, I realized, was my weapon. That night, as my parents toasted Lindsay's bright future, I sat in the corner with my kids and watched. Watched the way Dad puffed out his chest when people praised his daughter. Watched the way Mom's cheeks flushed with pride as Lindsay flashed her badge. Watched how desperately they needed that illusion of being the family of success. That was the crack. Their pride wasn't just arrogance, it was a leash they wrapped around their own necks. So I started working in the shadows. I visited the library, poring over books about the company Lindsay now worked for. I asked discreet questions to people in town who had connections, secretaries, interns, suppliers. I learned the company's values, the way it prized integrity, loyalty, teamwork, all the things Lindsay had never possessed. And then I began observing Lindsay herself. She wasn't discreet. She bragged about everything. I listened as she boasted on the phone about skipping meetings, about flirting with her manager, about passing off someone else's work as her own. She flaunted her recklessness like it made her powerful. She didn't realize I was listening. Piece by piece, I collected her habits, her shortcuts, her careless arrogance. Not with recordings, not with screenshots, just with my eyes and memory. Because I knew, when the moment came, I wouldn't need proof on a screen. I'd make sure she condemned herself in front of everyone who once applauded her. Every insult my parents threw at me, every time Lindsay smirked, I added another brick to the wall I was building in my mind. I didn't lash out. I didn't break. I waited. And when Mom bragged at dinner that Lindsay's team at work was hosting a big presentation, an open event where clients and families were invited to watch their brightest talent, I knew my time had come. They thought it was worthless trash. They thought I'd stay silent forever. But at that presentation, I would show them all what trash really looked like. The day of Lindsay's presentation came, and my parents treated it like a coronation. Mom wore her best pearls, Dad shaved and put on a suit he hadn't touched in years, and Lindsay strutted around in her brand new blazer like she was already running the company. "You better not embarrass us," Dad muttered as I loaded Hannah and Michael into the car. "Stay in the back, don't talk, don't breathe too loud." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The company's auditorium was crowded with employees, clients, and families. Posters with the company's values, integrity, teamwork, excellence, lined the walls. Lindsay ate up every glance as she stepped onto the stage, her fake smile polished, her heels clicking across the platform. Mom whispered loudly enough for people to hear. "That's my daughter up there, the successful one." I held my kids' hands, my heart steady. They had dragged me down for years, but tonight, I wasn't the one on display. Lindsay was. The presentation began. Lindsay launched into slides she clearly hadn't prepared herself, her voice faltering when she had to explain details she didn't understand. I saw her glance nervously at her team, but she pushed on, fluffing her words, trying to charm the room. Then it happened. One of the clients, a sharp woman in her 50s, raised her hand. "Can you explain the cost analysis breakdown you mentioned?" Lindsay froze. She flipped through her papers, stammering. The numbers aren't important right now. What matters is—" The woman cut her off. "Numbers are the only thing that matters." Whispers spread across the room. Lindsay's cheeks flushed, but she tried to laugh it off. "Don't worry, I'll have my assistant send it later." That was my moment. From my seat in the middle row, I raised my voice, clear and calm. "Maybe she doesn't have the numbers because she didn't do the work." The room went still, heads turned. My parents snapped their necks toward me, eyes wide with fury. Lindsay's smile cracked. "Excuse me?" I stood, my children at my sides, my voice strong. "She's been bragging for weeks about skipping meetings, copying other people's work, even flirting with her manager instead of preparing. You handed her this job on a silver platter. And this," I gestured to the stage where she stood frozen, "is what happens when you give pride to someone who's never earned it." Gasps filled the auditorium. The clients turned to each other, murmuring. Her coworkers' faces confirmed it, some nodding, others grimacing because they knew it was true. Lindsay tried to laugh, but her voice wobbled. "She's lying! She's jealous!" But the client who had asked the question shook her head firmly. "No, I believe her. This explains everything I've seen tonight." The manager stood, red-faced. "Lindsay, step down." Mom jumped up, her pearls clattering. "You can't do this! That's our daughter! She's the best!" Dad roared, "You're ruining everything!" But no one was listening to them anymore. The recruiters, the managers, the clients. All eyes were on Lindsay as she stumbled off the stage, her fake confidence collapsing, her offer letter useless in her trembling hands. My parents tried to follow her, shouting at anyone who would listen, but the whispers followed them like a curse. Frauds, liars, trash. I bent down to Hannah and Michael, their eyes wide. "See?" I whispered. "No matter how much someone laughs at you, truth always makes them trip." We walked out, leaving my parents in chaos, Lindsay sobbing in the hallway, her precious badge slipping from her blazer pocket. They had laughed when they stole my future, but tonight I stole something they could never get back, their pride. And I didn't need recordings or proof or shouting. I just needed to let Lindsay be exactly who she was. Worthless trash dressed up in someone else's success. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video?